Tonight, we're live again in Beijing, just steps from the Forbidden City. Day 2 of the Superpower Summit, set to begin within hours, just beyond those walls. And tonight, we take you inside the room between the two leaders from the Secretary of State himself. The high-stakes summit kicking off in maximum style. The elaborate welcome ceremony next to Tiananmen Square. The handshake between the two leaders. And the lavish state dinner, packed with American CEOs.
Amazing people, and they're all with me.
The two leaders meeting for hours, face to face.
We had extremely positive and productive conversations.
Tonight, we have new details of what happened inside that room.
Chinese aren't going to like it.
As I go one-on-one with Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Do you think China wants to invade Taiwan?
Did President Trump get China's promise to help with Iran?
Did President Trump raise the issue of Iran with China?
He did.
As the president is criticized for comments seeming to brush off American economic concerns.
Doesn't that sound out of touch, though?
Also tonight, protests erupting in Cuba. The island nation plunged into darkness. Our new reporting. Why was the CIA director there today? And what Secretary Rubio told me about a $100 million aid offer now on the table. Chilling video of a masked man in a white jumpsuit holding a screwdriver trying to get into a suburban home. The violent interaction when a young woman confronted him. Exclusive new images of the Coast Guard seizing a boat belonging to the man whose wife vanished in the Bahamas. And plane crash survivor speaks her message after that stunning rescue at sea, thinking she might not live to see another day. And back here in China, we'll bring you here, where they're on the cutting edge of humanoid robots. You'll see the assembly line up close. The robots marching into the future.
Should it be seen as something that is going to be maybe part of your military one day?
Is this the worker of tomorrow or just a fad? And what happened when we rented our own robot for the day? Plus, we take you 1,000 miles away from Beijing.
They're this way.
To meet the giant pandas, getting ready to move to the U.S. And the caretakers preparing to say goodbye.
So you've known her since she was a baby?
Yeah.
As our coverage of Day 2 of this history-making summit starts right now.
This is a special edition of Top Story. President Trump in China. Reporting tonight from Beijing, here is Tom Llamas.
And good evening from Beijing. We are live as the sun comes up here in China as these two world leaders prepare for round 2. We're standing right now on the steps of the Imperial Ancestral Temple, the first streaming broadcast ever from here, foreign or domestic. It is a site celebrating the past. And just minutes from here, just over those walls over there, two superpowers will grapple over the future. This was the marquee moment, President Trump and President Xi coming face to face, shaking hands just off of Tiananmen Square. He was welcomed with this elaborate ceremony, complete with crowds of cheering kids and a flex of military might. Then a lavish state dinner, President Xi calling the two leaders partners, not rivals. But between the pageantry and fanfare, what exactly did they agree upon? The war in Iran at the center of these talks. President Trump says China offered to help in his efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and even pledged not to give weapons to the Iranian regime. And topping China's priorities, Taiwan. There's stark warning tonight that conflict could arise if the issue is, quote, mishandled. Trade a key issue for both countries, the all-star American CEOs flanking the president as China says their doors, quote, will only open wider. What we know tonight about a major deal involving Boeing. And we're getting our greatest insights from the man who was there for it all, Secretary of State Marco Rubio. In his only interview since the summit began, he tells me where China now stands on the Iran war, what the U.S. reaction is to China's push on Taiwan, and how this pivotal summit could impact the American people. Tonight, the Superpower Summit and that handshake watched around the world. China's President Xi welcoming President Trump here to Beijing. Rolling out the red carpet for the American president with a stunning and elaborate ceremony, including children cheering for President Trump.
Those children were amazing, and they represent so much. And I know they represent so much to you.
Inside, the meeting kicking off with praise. President Xi declaring they should be partners, not rivals. And this from President Trump.
You're a great leader. Sometimes people don't like me saying it, but I say it anyway because it's true. I only say the truth.
But tonight, a reminder of tensions looming over these talks. A commercial ship was attacked and seized near the Strait of Hormuz and forced to sail towards Iran, according to the British military.
Let's talk about Iran.
Minutes after the meeting wrapped, we spoke with Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Did President Trump raise the issue of Iran with China?
He did, and it was important because the Chinese side said they are not in favor of militarizing the Straits of Hormuz, and they're not in favor of a tolling system. And that's our position. We will never support an Iranian tolling system in the Straits of Hormuz, nor do we think they have a right to put mines in international waters.
What exactly did President Trump ask President Xi for when it comes to Iran?
He didn't ask him for anything. I mean, we're not asking for China's help. We don't need their help.
But he raises the issue.
We raised the issue to make clear what our position is. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And that's what they were, they were on the verge of building a conventional capability where they had so many rockets, so many drones, that you couldn't do anything against them. They would hide behind that conventional shield to do whatever they wanted with their nuclear program in the future. That's why the president chose to act. In response to that, Iran has decided that they're going to take an international waterway and turn it into theirs and charge tolls for it. We're not going to allow that to happen.
Late today, President Trump saying President Xi offered to assist with Iran. China is Iran's biggest ally.
President Xi would like to see a deal, man. He'd like to see the Hormuz Strait open. He said if I could be of any help whatsoever, I would like to help.
And that China pledged not to give weapons to the Iranian regime.
He said he's not going to give military equipment. That's a big statement. But at the same time, he said, they buy a lot of their oil there, and they'd like to keep doing that.
Iran has been attacking commercial oil tankers and blocking the Strait of Hormuz, driving up gas prices.
For our viewers back home in America, every day Americans are spending more and more, and they're saving less and less. How do you explain to them, why is this taking so long in Iran?
Well, first of all, I would say, obviously, it may seem like a long time from the perspective of other conflicts that we've seen in the past. It's only been weeks, not months, and certainly not years.
But longer than the president has told the American people, to be fair.
Well, we achieved the missions of Epic Fury. We destroyed there is no Iranian Navy. There is no Iranian Navy. They have small little speedboats with a machine gun on it, but that's not a Navy.
I understand, but the strait is closed. There's still uranium.
Well, the straits are closed is their reaction to the aftermath of Epic Fury. They decided they're going to take the world hostage. And what they're doing is illegal. It violates every law on the books in terms of international law. They are threatening to sink commercial vessels that don't pay them a toll. That's unacceptable to the whole world.
As the president was leaving for China, did he make a mistake when he told a reporter that America's financial situation isn't playing, quote, even a little bit of a role in his motivations to make a deal with Iran?
I don't think about American financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. You cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. The American people understand. When it's over, you're going to have a massive drop in the price of oil.
No, I think what the president is claiming is that Iran's not going to use that as leverage against us.
Doesn't that sound out of touch, though? I mean, Americans are spending so much for gas.
Because I think what the president is making clear is that we're not going to let Iran use that as leverage. Remember, there's no free press. There is no you in Iran, right? There is no press in Iran that can criticize the regime or say, create any pressure on them. And I think what the president's making clear is if the Iranians think that they are going to, use our domestic politics to pressure him into a bad deal, that's not going to happen. We've taken extraordinary measures to keep gas prices lower than they are in some other parts of the world, and they will go down. Those straits will be open, and we will see those prices go down. But I would also say there's a price attached to a nuclear Iran. If Iran ever acquires a nuclear weapon, they will immediately, what would stop them from controlling the straits then? And then forget about it being a 3-month or a 6-month problem. It could be a permanent one.
Back at the summit.
How are your talks, sir?
It's great. Great place. Incredible. China's beautiful.
A late-night dinner.
Achieving the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and making America great again can go hand in hand.
We had extremely positive and productive conversations.
But also a stark warning about the island nation of Taiwan, a self-governing democracy that China's communist government claims as its territory. After the meeting, a Chinese spokesperson saying if the issue is, quote, mishandled, the countries could collide or even conflict, pushing the relationship into dangerous territory.
Did President Xi request to President Trump not to sell weapons to Taiwan?
Well, that topic has been discussed in the past. It did not feature prominently in today's discussion.
But nothing has changed in the way the U.S. views the relationship with Taiwan. It will defend Taiwan, as has been.
Yeah, U.S. policy on the issue of Taiwan is unchanged as of today and as of the meeting that we had here today. It was raised. They always raise it on their side. We always make clear our position, and we move on to the other topics.
Do you think China wants to invade Taiwan?
Well, I think China's preference is probably to have Taiwan willingly, voluntarily join them. We think it would be a terrible mistake to force that through force or anything of that nature. There would be repercussions for that globally, not just from the United States. And we kind of leave it there.
And then there's trade. President Trump trying to level the playing field for U.S. companies here in China, bringing with him top American CEOs, including Apple's Tim Cook and NVIDIA's Jensen Huang. And Elon Musk there, taking selfies at dinner. Earlier, President Trump posting he would tell President Xi to open up China to American business. Tonight, Chinese state media says China's leader told the American CEOs China's door will only open wider.
One thing he agreed to today is going to order 200 jets. That's a big thing, Boeing. 200 big ones. That's a lot of jobs.
There's going to be some agricultural purchases, which are important, and they're important for our growers.
And on the case of Jimmy Lai, the pro-democracy publisher and critic of China's Communist Party, serving a 20-year sentence on a controversial conviction for violating a national security law. Chinese officials say he was a principal mastermind of Hong Kong's riots. But Lai's daughter told us this week she hoped President Trump could secure his release.
We are extremely confident that it's this administration that will be the one to bring our father back home to us.
Did the president bring up the case of Jimmy Lai?
The president always raises that case and a couple others. And obviously, we'll hope to get a positive response from that.
If China were to release him, could he come to the United States?
I think we would like to see him released. We'd be open to any arrangement that would work for them as long as he's given his freedom.
Our NBC teams are reporting and covering every step of this groundbreaking summit in Beijing. And here with me tonight in China, our senior White House correspondent, Gabe Gutierrez, and international correspondent, Janice Mackey-Frayer, who's based here in Beijing for us, and chief international correspondent and a good friend of Top Story, Keir Simmons, is live for us from Tel Aviv. So, Gabe, I'm going to start with you. This is one of the highest profile summits President Trump has had. What are the quote-unquote deliverables? What does President Trump bring back to the United States?
Well, at this point, President Trump wants to project this image of stability. And so far, this image of cooperation, this is something that he's achieved so far in the summit. Now, we don't really have a lot of the details here. Certainly, the administration is going to tout whatever investment deals that it says it can bring back. We're still waiting on details on that. President Trump teased a little bit about it today. But he also heard from President Xi today, and this is something we expect White House officials to really tout, that China has expressed interest in perhaps purchasing more oil and gas from the U.S. Moving forward. So at this point, it was trying to go. The administration is trying to come here to rebalance trade with China. That's what senior administrations have been saying. Question of how big this deal will be, but at this point it was a very stable summit, and that's a win for the administration in their view.
Talk is talk, but actions are what matter. So we have Boeing. We're hearing about agricultural products, maybe beef, soybeans. We'll figure that out. You just mentioned oil and gas as well. When will all this happen? I mean, those Boeing jets, how long will it take to purchase?
What's interesting you mentioned that, Tom, because last year the president visited the Middle East. The Saudi firm agreed to purchase 30 Boeing jets, but those aren't expected to at least the next decade. 2032. And look, Boeing, there's a huge backlog of the jets that they're trying to build. More than 6,000 unfilled orders so far. Only about 200 or so have even been delivered this year. So there are real questions, Tom, about when these jets will be constructed, will be delivered. But the administration will try to argue that this is the president sticking up for American manufacturing
and
jobs.
Good to have those orders, right? So it keeps people working, especially at Boeing. Janice, you had an incredible opportunity to meet with these all-star CEOs and hang out with them for a little bit post-summit. What did you learn?
Well, the CEOs, this business delegation, has been a key feature of this visit, and all 17 of them, from Jensen Huang to Tim Cook to Elon Musk, were at the Great Hall of the People yesterday to meet with Li Qiang. He's China's premier. And as they were walking in, I asked Jensen Huang why it was important for him to make this trip. And he said, this is an incredible opportunity for me to represent the United States And I'm here for one purpose, and that's to represent the U.S. and to support the president. And this is the cream of the crop when it comes to American business, the top 30 companies. And I asked Tim Cook what it was that he was hoping to take away from it. And he said simply, great collaboration. The interesting part, the fun part, was at the other end of the hallway, Elon Musk was walking with a couple of Chinese ushers and his 6-year-old son, X.
His son's here?
His son is here. He was skipping along, I think oblivious to where he was at the moment. He was wearing a Chinese silk vest and had a ball hat with a dragon sticking out of it. And so they went around the corner, and I think he was passed off to some minders while Elon Musk went in for this meeting with the Chinese premier.
Yeah, and all those CEOs answering the call to come here to China. Kira, I want to ask you, even as President Trump says China is willing to help on Iran, we have new reporting that Chinese companies could be planning secret weapon sales. Is China offer to help insincere?
Yeah, Tom, this is our own Dan DeLuce reporting, citing two sources saying that Chinese state-controlled companies have been in talks with Iran about selling those weapons possibly selling those weapons to Iran secretly, really, through third-party countries. Look, it is a sobering reminder that China is a strategic competitor to the United States. I think it's also interesting just to consider what it means from the Chinese perspective. And certainly, China will be looking at Iran and viewing it as a risk that the country could collapse and wanting to ensure that Iran doesn't do that because of China's own strategic interests in that region. And as well, of course, Beijing will be looking at the potential weakening of American power through the Strait of Hormuz, through the tension over the Strait of Hormuz. And China will like that, even as it wants to acquire the oil and the goods and the commodities that it gets through that vital passageway.
And then, Kira, I guess the big question is, what has been the reaction to the China summit in the Middle East, especially from Iran?
Yeah, the Iranian foreign minister had something really interesting to say. He said that we are used to this kind of conflict, and he appeared to be referencing both the US and China. And it does, again, it illustrates, it underscores the way that this is a complex picture, that Iran it has a very strong relationship with China, but it doesn't simply do China's bidding. And then another aspect of all of that, another complexity, if you like, is just to remember that many of the Gulf countries also sell oil to China, so that China has to balance its relationship both with Iran and with those countries. So once again, China is going to be viewing this as a complex picture in which it wants to continue to consume commodities, and it wants to maintain a relationship with many of these countries, while at the same time it is viewing the US as a competitor.
Kira, stand by for us. Janice, I know Chinese officials have made Taiwan the priority in these talks. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, you just heard him there, said we are not changing our stance. How much does China want the U.S. to soften our position when it comes to Taiwan?
Taiwan is the issue for Beijing, and we see China's leader Xi Jinping leaning into his relationship with President Trump, who sees Xi as a friend, to make this point very clear that Taiwan is a red line that's not going to be crossed. Xi warned that if there's any mishandling of the Taiwan issue, there could be a clash, and it could put the U.S.-China relationship into dangerous territory. And that was stark language to hear after this grand welcome and these warm words about cooperation. Beijing will continue in its own way to push the U.S. to either delay or to scale back U.S. weapons sales. And as we talked about yesterday, this is almost unprecedented. U.S. presidents have never discussed U.S. weapons sales with the Chinese leadership, so that it's now at the top of the agenda of this summit and is likely going to be at that summit in D.C. in September is a sign that this is something that Beijing is going to continue to push.
I do want to ask you, what has been the reaction in China to President Trump and some of his comments? I know some of them have gone viral. They're on social media.
Well, in China, President Trump is a larger-than-life figure, and that comes with opinions both good and bad, and the tariffs, triple-digit tariffs, certainly didn't help. On Chinese social media, he's known as Trump the nation builder, except it's tongue-in-cheek because it's not making America great again, it's making this nation stronger. So there's been a lot of attention to what's being said at this summit. There was one comment in particular that went wild yesterday, and it was when President Trump talked about the business delegation, that these are the top 30, that he didn't want number 2s or number 3s, he only wanted number 1s, and that was going to be a sign of respect to China. And people really loved that. There were more than 7 million views on Weibo, which is like X here, and thousands of comments, people really liking this idea that President Trump came to China with an offering, and that is seen as a sign that he wants to cooperate.
And maybe a strategy that works. We're going to have to wait and see. Janice, Gabe, Keir, so great to have you guys on Top Story tonight. And as President Trump met with Leader Xi here in China, the head of the CIA touching down in Cuba to meet with its leaders. You can see the U.S. plane here on the ground in Havana. A CIA official confirming Director John Ratcliffe met with Cuban officials just today and delivered a message from President Trump that the U.S. is prepared to seriously engage on economic and security issues only if Cuba makes, quote, fundamental changes. Ratcliffe arriving to a Cuba in crisis. Take a look at these images from overnight. Crowds pouring into the streets of Havana, furious over rolling blackouts, some of the worst the country has seen in years. The U.S. energy blockade deepening a humanitarian crisis that has been building for decades under the communist regime. The state-run electric union says the national grid, I should say, suffered a major failure early this morning with no timeline given for repair. And Cuba's energy minister now says the country has completely run out of oil and diesel. Earlier, I asked Secretary Rubio about the $100 million aid package that the U.S. is offering to Cuba. Here's that portion of our conversation.
The State Department just re-upped the offer of $100 million in aid to Cuba. Cuba's foreign minister says that's an absolute lie, that there is no money coming. Are there any strings attached to that $100 million in aid?
The only strings attached is that they have to be distributed by non-governmental sources like the Catholic Church. I was at the Vatican last week. I spoke to the Catholic Church again. They're willing to play that role.
So what's the holdup? Cuba's lying?
Cuba. They're their holdup. They're lying. They lie all the time. I mean, how can he say it's not a real offer? We've made it to them privately. We're not making it public. There's $100 million. By the way, we've given them humanitarian aid. After the hurricane, we provided them $6 million of humanitarian aid, $3 million of which was distributed, $3 million of which is still being held up, but is available for them. Now we're saying here's $100 million of humanitarian aid. So I don't know if they watch your broadcast in Cuba, but if they are, the Cuban people should know there's $100 million of food and medicine available for them right now, and the only reason it's not reaching the Cuban people is because of the regime.
No strings attached.
The only string attached is it has to be distributed by I don't want non-governmental organizations. This can't be humanitarian aid that the government steals for itself.
In a year, will someone named Díaz-Canel or Castro be in charge in Cuba?
I don't know. I hope not, because if they are, then Cuba will probably not have progressed.
But is there still a plan for change in Cuba?
Sure. I mean, look, the change in Cuba is their economy doesn't function. It's not a functional economy.
No, I get that, but what is the U.S. plan? I'm trying to understand the U.S. plan.
Well, I wouldn't tell you exactly what our plan is, because I don't want them to know what our plan is. But our plan for Cuba is a prosperous future. That's what we want. It's in our national interest. And to have a prosperous Cuba, not to have a failed state 90 miles from our shores. So how do you have a prosperous state where people can succeed? Understand Cubans. You know this. You understand this as well as I do because of where we come from. Cubans are successful everywhere in the world except one place, Cuba. And so that's what we want. We want Cubans not to have to leave that island in order to be successful. But they can't, because the current model they have is, it's not just it's broken. It doesn't work, and it'll never change as long as the people that are there now are running it. They are closed-minded, unfortunately. I hope I'm wrong. I would love for them to come to their senses and say, okay, we recognize this really has to change, and it has to change big. But right now, they don't seem to be indicating that. They seem to be digging in.
And hours after that interview, Cuba's leader Miguel Díaz-Canel posting a statement on X accepting the U.S. offer of $100 million in humanitarian aid. With that, I want to bring in Carlos Curbelo, NBC political analyst and former congressman representing South Florida. Carlos, there's been a lot of talk over the last few months, and you and I have talked about this right here on this broadcast. It feels like something may be changing. We have the CIA director now on the ground in Cuba. We have Cuba accepting that $100 million in aid after after just a couple days ago saying it was an absolute lie. How can we put this into perspective right now? All of this happening as Cubans are burning garbage, they are protesting, and the island nation is out of oil.
That's right, Tom. In Cuba, the lights are out, and it really does appear that finally, after 67 years, that the hour is getting very late for this regime. It's difficult to predict exactly what's going to happen in Cuba, Tom, but it is becoming very obvious that there is going to be some kind of change with the regime in Havana. This situation is simply untenable. Cubans are realizing every day more and more that they have nothing to lose, and they're getting extremely desperate. So this pressure campaign by the Trump administration is clearly working, and I think that in the coming weeks, we're going to see some kind of change in Cuba. What exactly that looks like, whether the Castros are out, whether Díaz-Canel is out, that remains to be seen. But the status quo no longer seems like it is plausible in that island nation.
Carlos, explain to our viewers why the CIA director would be there. Cuba has been on a state list of sponsors of terrorism for the U.S. So what is being negotiated right now? Because that's been a point of contention. Cuba has tried to lobby the U.S. and the UN, saying that they have no ties to terrorism. And from what I understand, a lot of the meeting today was about that.
That's right, Tom. And in addition to those topics, I know John Ratcliffe. I served with him in Congress, the director of the CIA. He's very direct. He's very sober. The administration, it appears, decided to use him as an instrument to convey to the Cuban regime how serious the United States is about seeing some real change in Cuba. In addition to everything you said, I would not be surprised at all if John Ratcliffe delivered the message that it is getting very late and that the United States expects to see some real concrete changes in Cuba, none of the cosmetic stuff that they have been putting forward over the last few months, real changes that will help the island prosper, that will deliver some kind of freedom to the people there. And as Secretary Rubio said in your interview, that will allow the United States to have a reliable neighbor, a thriving, healthy country just 90 miles from our shore.
I do want to ask you, because Secretary of State Marco Rubio would not tell me what the plan is, right? I asked him, I said, what is the plan on Cuba? He doesn't want to share it exactly to the public. That's something President Trump has said as well. But what is your understanding of what the plan is? If there's not military intervention, right, what exactly happens, and how do you force the communist leadership that has been there since 1959 to suddenly wave the white flag and say, we're leaving, maybe even coming to a place like China?
Well, Tom, I think that there are two potential visions that the United States would accept. If the Castro family wants to remain in Cuba, they would have to make substantive changes. They would actually have to change the structure of their regime. They would have to allow basic human rights to be reestablished in Cuba, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. That is one possibility. The other one, of course, is a revolution, essentially. A new government in Cuba. The Castros are out. Díaz-Canel is out. I think under any scenario, Díaz-Canel is probably out. But I think those are the two paths that would be acceptable to Secretary Rubio, to Cuban-American members of Congress, and ultimately to President Donald Trump.
You know politics. You know what it's like to run in a midterm. Can the president gamble? Can he risk another conflict, international conflict, before November?
Tom, the risk here is relatively low. This is not a regime like Iran that has access to resources, that has countries like China and Russia supporting them. Cuba is extremely isolated now. Even countries in our hemisphere, governments like the one in Mexico and in Colombia, who have been supportive of the regime, are doing very little to actually help that regime survive right now. So this is not a situation like what we're seeing in the Middle East. This is a low-risk environment. Of course, anything could go wrong, but When we look at Cuba versus a situation like Iran, it's certainly more like Venezuela and probably even weaker than Venezuela was last December. So I don't think that's a major factor going into the decision-making process.
Okay. Carlos Curbelo, always great to have you on the broadcast. Just ahead, much more of our live coverage from Beijing, including an inside look at a robot factory here in China. Are they really as high-tech as they seem? I put some of the bots to the test, plus our exclusive access to the 2 giant pandas coming to the U.S., how they're preparing for their new habitat. Stay with us. And you're looking at the bustling streets of Beijing, a city of more than 20 million people that, as of late, has been crowded with a new kind of local. Humanoid robots have become a part of daily life here in the capital city and across China. We got an inside look at a factory where they're being built and even challenged one to a little game of soccer.
Inside the ex-humanoid plant in Beijing, a new generation of robots is taking shape. Step by step, the robots are assembled, tested, and then programmed. They're big, bulky, ready to run or crawl through hazardous terrain.
It looks aggressive. It's marching. Should it be seen as something that is going to be maybe part of your military one day?
No, no. Yeah, we don't want the robots to do that. Yeah, we want robots to help people.
The company says these robots will make living easier by helping humans and could even be used in emergency situations.
So when you talk about helping out in the house, give me some examples, like help watch the children, help maybe elderly residents, clean dishes. I mean, what is it going to do?
The elderly, maybe, because less and less people want to have kids nowadays.
It's clear there's still a lot of experimenting going on, including this silicone-like face on the humanoid head.
What is this?
It's a bionic face because, like, in the future, we want the robot have more, temperature. So we want it, also look like human.
So you're going to put these faces, these heads on the robots?
Yeah, like in the future.
Ex-Humanoid says these robots are still 3 to 5 years from hitting the market. Most of the functions we saw were controlled by remote, but the goal is full autonomy.
There is a big gap between what they can do physically and what they can do autonomously. This is where they need the training data and they need the improvements in the AI.
But China is closing that gap with startling speed. At a recent half marathon pitting Chinese humanoids besides real-life runners, a robot named Lightning won the race, finishing in just 50 minutes and 26 seconds. A record-breaking pace, and a huge leap from last year's race, where many models could barely maintain their balance. Off the track, the technology is already being put to work in major cities. China has robots managing traffic at busy intersections. It's all part of an all-out sprint for tech dominance. Just like with EVs, solar panels, and cell phones, China is flooding the zone with more than 150 companies trying to outproduce the rest of the world. One part of the industry that is already bringing in cash, rent a robot. In China, these pint-sized humanoids are delivered straight to your door, like this soccer-playing robot we rented. A little rusty at first, but after a few face plants, this little guy finds his footing and he can kick around, even scoring some goals.
When he gets going, he's pretty good. We'll have even more from Beijing later in the broadcast, including exclusive access to the giant pandas getting ready for their big move to the U.S. But for now, and the other major headlines back at home, I want to hand it over to my good friend and colleague Morgan Chesky in our Los Angeles studios. Morgan, good evening.
Hey, good evening, Tom. Look forward to much more coverage from Beijing. But still ahead coming up tonight on Top Story, we have breaking news out of Ohio. A plane crashing into a home where at least 2 people died. We'll show you more of that fiery scene. Plus, more people being monitored for the deadly hantavirus. What we now know about the Americans still in a hospital in Kansas. And the headliners just announced for the World Cup halftime show. Who made the cut? We'll have that coming up next. And we're back now with an update from the CDC as U.S. officials monitor the deadly hantavirus. And we're also learning more about the 18 Americans evacuated from that infected cruise ship. Our Camila Bernal joins us from Omaha tonight, where many of those very passengers are currently in quarantine. Camila, good to have you with us. What is the CDC saying tonight about the current status of hantavirus here in the United States and the level of concern we should have?
Hey, Morgan. So the CDC today is saying that there is not a single American that has tested positive for the Andes strain of the virus. So the risk to the public is low. And that is because the one American that they said had tested mildly positive has been tested again 3 different times here in the United States. All 3 tests came back negative. I spoke to the medical director of the biocontainment unit, and this is what she told me about this.
PCR testing is really a snapshot of a moment in time. And so currently he is testing negative, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he will continue to be negative. And so that's an ongoing assessment.
And I asked her what happened to the test that he had done overseas. And she said they believe that test was a false positive. They say he's now in the quarantine unit, and they believe this way he will be more comfortable and they can continue to monitor those symptoms, Morgan.
And Camila, as they're watching those folks in that quarantine unit, we're also learning more about the number of people being monitored across the states.
That's right. And there are now 3 people in Kansas, Morgan, who have been moved to a hospital. They're being observed at a hospital because they are high-risk exposure. That means they were with someone who tested positive for the Andes strain of the virus. So the CDC looking into people who are now back home, who maybe got off the boat or had some sort of exposure. And today we heard from officials saying all of those people should remain at home or at least not be around other people. So a more clear mandate from the CDC for people who have had some sort of exposure to this virus, Morgan.
All right, keeping track of all of it from Nebraska, Camila Bernal, thanks so much. Want to turn now to exclusive new images of the boat at the center of an American woman's disappearance in the Bahamas. We have never before seen pictures tonight. Take a look. Coast Guard boarding, seizing that vessel belonging to Brian and Lynette Hooker. And this comes weeks after Lynette went missing. Her husband, Brian, saying that she fell overboard. Authorities later arrested Brian in connection to his wife's disappearance, but he was quickly released without being charged. Our Stephen Romo joins us tonight with an update here. Stephen, we're getting these new images into the newsroom. We know that this has been a fluid investigation. What do we know specifically about the seizure of this boat?
Yeah, Morgan, there have been so many questions and, frankly, speculation as to what exactly has gone on in this investigation in the now month since Lynette Hooker has disappeared. There is actually now this movement in the case. The Coast Guard releasing those photos exclusively to NBC showing the seized vessel known as the Soulmate. So the boat had been in the Bahamas since this started, but headed toward Florida in recent days, being piloted by a chartered captain. Now, according to the Coast Guard, the chartered captain was hired by someone. It's not yet clear who that person was. Now, when the vessel was about 40 nautical miles off the coast of Florida, that's when investigators with the U.S. Coast Guard pounced, seizing that as part of the criminal investigation into the disappearance. They actually towed it to Florida, a Coast Guard station there. A Coast Guard spokesman saying, quote, "The evidence recovered from the Soulmate has been fruitful to this investigation," but would not elaborate on that evidence or who, if anyone, it points to. Morgan?
Yeah, still a lot of questions. Stephen, what's the latest on this search and investigation into Lynette Hooker's disappearance? Her husband says she fell off the boat without a life jacket, but clutching the boat's keys. Has there been any evidence recovered so far?
Yeah, a great question. A lot of people wanting to know what evidence was on that boat and what that could point to. But so far, the update for the search, it has moved into the recovery phase weeks ago now. We've heard from family members who are distraught about this, obviously hoping for more information. We do know that her husband, Brian Hooker, was taken into custody last month and held for 5 days for questioning, but then released without charges. He denies any wrongdoing in this case. We reached out to an attorney for comment on the seizure of this boat and have yet to hear back. Morgan?
All right, no doubt much more to come. Stephen Romo, we thank you. And tonight on Top Stories news feed, first responders in Ohio say 2 people were killed when a small plane crashed right into their home. And we have the flame video here, the smoke billowing out of that building in Akron, most of it understandably destroyed. Authorities say that both people who died were on board the plane. Nobody on the ground or inside that home was hurt. And the plane went down just a few miles from the airport where it took off. Still no word tonight on what caused that crash. And we have an update on a disturbing incident out of Hawaii. A tourist seen throwing a rock at an endangered monk seal is now facing federal charges. Authorities say they arrested the man in the Seattle area. That video, of course, sparked outrage in Hawaii after the rock hit the beloved seal known as Lani by the locals. If convicted, that man could face prison time and tens of thousands of dollars in fines. And for the first time in nearly its 100-year history, the final game of the World Cup will have what else? Its own halftime show. Yeah, it is a star-studded lineup. Madonna, BTS, Shakira, all set to take the big stage. FIFA announced the concert today, saying it will be similar to the one at the Super Bowl. Coldplay's Chris Martin helping organize the show for the final match. It's all scheduled for July 19th. Mark your calendars at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. Well, we have new details tonight in a terrifying plane crash off the coast of Florida. The survivors now opening up about their dramatic rescue after being stranded for hours at sea. Here's NBC's George Solis.
We thought we was gonna die.
Tonight, survivors on board the doomed plane that went down in the Atlantic speaking for the first time.
They saw us and they saved us. And I keep on telling them, I say, Lord, save us, Lord, save us.
Recalling the harrowing moments before their dramatic rescue at sea, some 80 miles from the Florida coast.
To be out there for 5 hours and then seeing no land and just seeing no black water, we thought we wouldn't live.
Now in a Florida hospital, Olympia Outen, her 2 sons and niece, among the 11 Bahamians plugged to safety in what U.S. military officials described as a miraculous rescue. The group was located thanks to an emergency transmitter by Air Force reservists that were training in the area and got the call.
I see the plane, I jump for joy, all of my heart, everything, I jump for joy, I start praising, I threw my hand up in the air, I say, thank you, Jesus.
The small twin-prop plane was en route to Freeport in the Bahamas when the pilot, Ian Nixon, issued a distress call. I spoke with Nixon by phone late this afternoon.
We're coming on top of the clouds. Almost felt like we hit something. Like it was the plane rocked. I lost navigation, radios, fuel gauges started to move up and down.
The group huddling together, their raft taking on water.
And it started to rain. You couldn't see nothing. All you seen was no whiteness.
Apart from some broken bones, blunt force injuries, and cuts, Outen says the group's spirits and faith tonight remain untouched.
They saved me and my family, because if it wasn't for them, we probably would have still been out there right now.
A survivor, tonight above all, grateful to be alive.
Well, you can hear it in her voice, and George Solis joins us now. George, I'm curious, any word tonight from investigators on what may have caused this crash?
Yeah, Morgan, it is still ongoing, and the pilot who I spoke with says he has a couple of working theories as to what went wrong aboard the flight, but he says he doesn't want to get too far ahead of the investigation. He is back home in the Bahamas nursing a few injuries himself, but he says he is eager to get back in the air as soon as possible. Morgan?
All right. George Solis, we thank you. Still ahead on Top Story tonight, a terrifying scene at a home outside Detroit. A woman says she was attacked by a masked man trying to get inside her home. What this telling video shows next. And we are back with the search for a suspect captured in chilling surveillance video. The man dressed in what looks like a hazmat suit, carrying a screwdriver, trying to break inside a suburban home. A young woman inside says he assaulted her before running off. Our Kathy Park explains.
Tonight, police searching for the suspect seen in this chilling home security camera video taken just outside Detroit. The masked man dressed in a white coverall and boot covers tries to open the sliding door before peering inside.
He had a screwdriver in his hand and like a backpack on the front. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, something's wrong.
He tries the door again, then moves to the window.
I just see this like blur of white go by the door.
That's when Victoria Williams, who had just returned from work, spotted him.
He was like, I'm just checking something for somebody. I said, I don't know who you are. And in the meantime, I'm hitting the 911 on my phone.
Moments later, she says the situation turned violent.
He's trying to push out our fence, and he grabbed here and here on me and started pushing me backwards, trying to get through the fence.
After the struggle, Williams says the intruder broke free. And in the security footage, you can see him running away from the scene. Police reported finding some of his clothes nearby in a trash can and have yet to identify the suspect. Victoria's parents, who also live in that home, grateful their daughter is okay.
A minute or two one way or the other, and it could have been a very, very different story. All dressed up in white. You know, is that to try to prevent DNA, or is it because he had some really bad ideas if he got in the house?
While Victoria is recovering from the frightening ordeal, she's sharing her story as a warning for others to stay alert.
People have come forward, oh, we saw him trying to jump your fence. We watched him try 4 or 5 times. And I'm like, if you see something suspicious like that, a man walking around in a hazmat suit, call the cops. If you're wrong, you're wrong. But who knows, you might be right in preventing something for somebody else.
And with the suspect still on the run, police have asked folks in that area to check their security camera footage to see if they can offer any more clues. Morgan?
All right, Kathy Parkley, thank you. Next tonight, the stunning twist in the legal saga of Alec Murdaugh. His lawyers now speaking out about the decision to overturn his double murder convictions. NBC's Laura Jarrett has more.
Alec Murdaugh's legal defense team now saying they have new evidence to exonerate him for the murder of his wife and son.
Is there a new working theory about if it was not Alec, who it could have been?
We do have information that's been provided to us.
Since the trial?
Since the trial.
Murdaugh's lawyers speaking exclusively with Craig Melvin on Today after that stunning decision from the South Carolina Supreme Court, tossing out the jury's verdict and ordering a new trial. And while state prosecutors have said they are weighing all options, Murdaugh will not take a plea.
No plea.
You're not going to take a plea under any circumstances?
Under any circumstances. He will never plead. Never plead guilty. Killing his wife and son, I promise you. Never.
Murdaugh's case captivated the country as his 6-week trial unfolded in 2023. But the jury's unanimous guilty verdict now upended after the high court found then clerk of the court Becky Hill tampered with the jury.
They were coached to not believe him.
Mandy Pierce, the juror who originally raised concerns about the clerk, not surprised the conviction was tossed out.
I feel like justice wasn't served, that he didn't get a fair trial.
Murdaugh has long maintained his innocence in the killings of his wife and son, while admitting to a laundry list of state and federal financial crimes, keeping him behind bars for decades. Still, the state saying it's ready to do it all over again.
It boils down to the obligations we have to the people of South Carolina and to the victims. They still require an answer. They still require justice, and that's our job.
As for what comes next here, the state has a couple options at its disposal. They can ask the court to reconsider their decision, essentially asking the state Supreme Court to take a second look at what they've done here, or they can ask the U.S. Supreme Court to weigh in. However, that's not an option that typically succeeds. Back to you.
All right, much more to come. And coming up after this break, we'll check back in with Tom in Beijing and get an exclusive look at the latest round of panda diplomacy, all playing out between the United States and China. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Finally tonight, who doesn't love pandas? They are popular in China as they are back at home. And the latest round of panda diplomacy is playing out between the two countries. Janice Mackey-Frayer has exclusive access to the two pandas getting ready for their upcoming journey to America.
The countdown is on for the return of giant pandas to Zoo Atlanta, with a fluffy pair of the iconic bears soon getting ready to roll. They're this way. We were invited to get a real-life look at Fu Shuang and Ping Ping, both 6 years old and U.S. bound, as part of a new 10-year conservation agreement. Panda fans will soon learn that Ping Ping loves to follow his keepers around. That's not your typical panda protocol. And that he's also a very dedicated bamboo eater. While Fu Shuang, which means double happiness, is playful but nervous. She likes apples and resting her chin on her paw.
So you've known her since she was a baby?
Yeah. In 2020, very cute. And very lovely and very smart. Yeah, smart.
It's all part of a revival in panda diplomacy here that for the U.S. started in 1972 after President Nixon's landmark visit to China. Now with President Trump on his own high-stakes trip, pandas on the move are seen as an unofficial measure of U.S.-China relations. With pairs of the treasured bears already in Washington and San Diego, Zoo Atlanta is renovating their panda enclosures to better help them adapt. The journey begins here in the panda's hometown of Chengdu, at this research base where both of them were born and raised. Soon, Fushuang and Ping Ping will be moved to another panda base in the lush mountains further south, where handlers will get them ready for the nearly 8,000-mile flight, their departure date a closely guarded secret. A send-off is always bittersweet for fans here in China, where pandas enjoy rock star status. What are you going to tell your friends about the pandas?
I want to tell them about what they look like and what they're doing.
Fushuang and Ping Ping have never met, but will soon head out into the world together, creating pandemonium along the way. Janice Mackey-Freire, NBC News, Chengdu, China.
And we can't wait to meet them. We thank Janice for that story, and we thank you for watching this special edition of Top Story on the historic U.S.-China Summit. We'll be right back here tomorrow night, live from Beijing. I'm Tom Llamas. Stay right there. More news on the way.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.